Welcome back. When we left off last time, we had cut out all 4 decks, applied stain and a coat of polyurethane, and cut the dividing lines into the deck. We had also built the bases from the remaining plywood and stained the deck grooves to match the base. Finally, we applied 1/2-inch veneer to the deck and stained to match. Okay, so what do we have left to do? Primarily, we have to bend the rails, attach them to the base, and then finish the base to match. Additionally, we have to finish the deck surface to a smooth polish. Then we have to attach the deck to the base, paint the bottom, attach some felt pads, wax the deck, and insert the 8 pegs. I was mistakenly under the impression that it would only take a couple of coats of polyurethane to fill the grooves. No matter how many coats I applied, the grooves kept coming back. Eventually, after much time, material, and psychological distress, I was able to achieve a smooth finish on the first deck. I completed that board and we started playing on it while I contemplated what to do with the other 3 boards. I decided to attempt finishing a second and third deck by using a squeeze bottle to only apply urethane to the grooves and aggressively build it up. This resulted in a very lumpy surface around the lines with a groove in the middle. We enjoyed playing on the completed board while I flailed about trying to figure out why I couldn't get the grooves flush with the deck surface. After about a month and a half of playing, well, let me show you. This board was completely smooth 6 weeks ago. This startling result led to some research, and it turns out that polyurethane takes 45 days to fully cure. Obviously, I needed a different approach. I figured there were 2 options. 1, use stainable wood filler, stain it to match the base, fill the grooves, sand, and polyurethane. This seems inexpensive, easy, and effective. Or 2, use clear epoxy coating. This seemed complicated, messy, and expensive. So this is what I attempted. I won't go into the details on how to apply an epoxy coating. There are many YouTube videos on this subject published by experts. Suffice to say that it was exactly as predicted: messy, expensive, and complicated. The instructions say to mix the 2 components for a total of 12 minutes and then apply a very thick coating that overflows the edges. I managed to thin the epoxy with rubbing alcohol with mixed results. It flowed better, allowing me to apply a thinner coat, but it had some low spots that needed a second application. Eventually I achieved a smooth enough surface on the 3 remaining decks so that I could start polishing them. I started with 220 grit, then 320, 400, at 500 I started wet sanding, then 1200, and 1500, and finally finishing with a polishing compound. The next thing to do is figure out how to bend and attach the rails to the base of the game. The rails are made out of a 1 by 2 inch 8-foot long maple board, which, as you know, is really 3/4 of an inch by 1.5 inches. And since I had 4 builds to play with, I decided to experiment with rails of different thicknesses. 2 of the game boards would get a 1/2 inch thick rail, one solid, and the other by laminating 2 1/4 inch thick slats together. The other 2 game boards would get a 3/8 inch thick rail, one solid, and the other by laminating 2 3/16 inch thick slats together. I ripped the boards on my table saw and somehow lost the footage. I then ran the rails through my planer to remove the saw marks and attain the desired thicknesses. Here I've assembled the PVC bath, inserted 2 wooden slats, and filled the pipe with boiling water. I put the cap on and let the wood steep for 30 minutes. I decided to bend 2 rails at a time, which turned out to be a mistake. When you're bending wood, the inside is compressed and the outside is stretched around the form. The circumference of a 30-inch diameter circle is 7 feet 10 inches, which is fine for the inside slat. The circumference of a 30.5-inch diameter circle is 7 feet 11.8 inches. Unfortunately, my outer rail wasn't quite long enough and I had to make a short section to fill the gap. Ironically, when I bent the solid slats, I didn't have this problem. The inside compressed more and the outside stretched more. Here I am measuring the amount of overlap on the rail. On the 2-ply rails, I decided that a butt join was sufficient. The rails would easily hold their shape because of the layer of glue between the slats. On the single-ply rails, I thought that the amount of spring back on the bent wood was going to pose a challenge. The rail is only held on by a layer of glue on the half-inch edge of the base plywood. I was pretty sure that a butt join wouldn't hold for very long. So I decided to cut a finger joint on each end of the rail. The depth of the fingers was the amount of the overlap. This is a standard jig that cuts the fingers the same width as the saw blade. Because my saw blade is 3/16 of an inch wide and the stock is 1½ inches wide, I cut 8 even sets of fingers and slots. And because I turned the board around when cutting the other end, there was no need to offset the first cut. It happened naturally. Because the rail has some significant spring back and the clamps can apply tremendous force, it is easy to distort or break the base while attaching the rail. To mitigate this, I'm using the bending form to protect the base and provide an anchor for attaching the clamps. I let the glue dry overnight and then stained and applied polyurethane to the base, matching the grooves on the deck. I used the centering jig to align the deck on the base before gluing, guaranteeing that it is positioned exactly in the center of the base. Before applying glue, I roughed up the finish to allow for a better bond. I painted the bottom with some black enamel paint that I had left over from some other project, and when it had dried, applied 3 felt pads 270 degrees apart. Other Crokinole sites suggested using carnauba-based car wax. I ended up buying this and it works very well. Just wipe it on, let it dry to a haze, and polish it off with a clean dry cloth. I can't remember which of the websites or videos it was that I ran across the idea of using shelf pins for the bumper pegs. I'd love to give credit to the person who discovered this idea. I ended up using these from Plate River Engineering, and I think they are perfect. They fit very snugly in the 3/16 hole and are attractive and durable. There are several Crokinole supply websites where you can purchase discs. They are inexpensive and come in an assortment of colors. I decided to purchase discs because they are a little complicated to build. One side is convex and the other is concave. Had I decided to include a blooper section, this video would have been 4 hours long. I learned a great deal, and if I ever decide to build another 4 boards, there are a few things that I would do. 1. Have the lumberyard cut the 4x8 sheet of plywood into 2 4x4 pieces. 2. Be precise in measuring where to drill the center hole for cutting out the decks. I fudged this a little and just barely had enough remaining wood to build the bases. 3. For the rails, I would rip the 1x2 down the center, creating slats that are 3/8 of an inch wide, minus the thickness of my saw blade. I think that was the most attractive and functional size. 4. I like the finger joints on the rails and would repeat that process. I think they look great and provide a lot of strength. 5. I would definitely, absolutely, positively, 100% fill the grooves with stained wood filler and finish with polyurethane. That's it. Have fun, and feel free to ask me any questions. Thank you for hanging out with me on GamesMaker.